Never permit shortcuts. Make speeches. When possible, refer all matters to committees for further study and consideration. Never less than 5 people. Bring up irrelevant issues as frequently as possible. Advocate caution. Raise the question of whether any decision lies within the jurisdiction of the group or whether it may conflict with the policy. Any person who has ever experienced any type of collaboration is no stranger to the culture. Yet the points I've just named come from Simple Sabotage Field Manual, which covers techniques of sabotaging enemy forces and was written in 1944 by the Intelligence Agency of the United States. How come you can still see this advice followed with good intentions at work? Hi, my name is Valentin Dragin, and I specialize in system thinking, business analysis, and agile, but not agile with a trademark sign, which is being so desired nowadays as a boxed product and not a culture like it was originally intended. The civilization has made miracles as telephone, internet, planes, and countless more come true, yet the way we come together to communicate and collaborate has not seen much change. It is either we have perfected the way we do it, or we are stuck with the old set of tools that prevents us from achieving more. In this video, let us evaluate the place of meetings as a tool in the modern workplace. The main goal of this presentation is for you to get inspiration and practical advice on how to make meetings more useful and impactful, shorter, and less disruptive. This video is not only for managers, team leads, or C-level people. Wherever you are, you can still trigger a change, as it has been proven many times by a variety of different specialists I've worked with. I understand that the topic of meetings can become quite overwhelming, so I'll try to keep it structured, and I'm intending this video to be kind of a handbook that you can always get back to refresh your memory and to take something new out of it. This video has 4 chapters. The first one is about how meetings can be substituted by alternative, more effective ways of communication and decision making. The second chapter is about advice for what to do before the meeting, if the meeting still makes sense. The third one covers how to maximize results at the meeting, and the fourth one, what to do after the meeting, so that the meeting would not go to waste. The things I'm going to mention today are going to be about the techniques and practices that I've accumulated over the years of work, having visited countless meetings, plus the books and researches I've read relevant to this topic. Watch this video and choose for yourself which ideas speak to you the most. By meetings, in the context of this video, I'm going to mean video calls or online meetings that have become so popular in the workplace in the recent years, but most of advice here can be applied to offline conversations too. Some of the methods and approaches you will get to know in this presentation may not be easy to implement at first, and I'm not proposing any silver bullet here, but I can bet you that they will save you hours of your time every month moving forward. Some of them are going to be trivial, but they are still going to be applicable, effective, and sometimes neglected these days, which makes it totally worth mentioning, even the obvious ones. At the end of the video, we are going to do a recap and draw conclusions from the whole point of this presentation. In addition, I'm going to give you a list of questions that will serve you as a useful checklist to make sure you're not forgetting something. After all, I encourage you to try some of these techniques out and treat the following set as a toolkit that you can always cherry pick from and adjust to your context. Executives spend an average of nearly 23 hours a week in meetings, up from less than 10 hours a week in 1960s. Before we start, I should say that I personally do not have a problem with talking, and I enjoy good chat. We need to communicate if we want to have a capable team. Meeting is one of the tools to achieve that. It might sound harsh, but a meeting is not outright beneficial. It has to be consciously made to be so. But is there anyone in the chain for whom it is quite the opposite and any meeting is beneficial? In fact, the more the better. Someone who still benefits from the abundance of video conferencing and does not want the situation to change. Say, if I owned the infrastructure for the meetings and get paid based on how much it is getting used, then yes, providers of the apps for meetings have an incentive to make video calls longer and more frequent. Think about how the design of major video call apps is not aimed at quick, effective knowledge sharing and brainstorming in the first place. Instead, you get a million features to fine-tune your video calling experience. That is one of the ways how major video call apps maintain retention of their users. The second case of this inverted logic would be if my performance was evaluated based on how many meetings I have. I can imagine some employees of various sorts out there being evaluated based on the level of engagement they have through meetings. Having many meetings and being engaged are not directly interconnected. Being really engaged is different from having a lot of conversations. The third hypothetical case that comes to my mind would be that if I were a control freak and I would scratch my inner itch of getting the feeling to have everything under control by constantly talking to people. You'll likely have to get management approval for $500 expense, but you can call a 1-hour meeting with 20 people and no one notices. There is a common misconception. Meetings in the workplace are treated as a universal solution for anything. The phrase, "let's discuss," sounds harmless, right? You can hear this phrase at work multiple times a day. "Let's discuss" is not binding the participants of the conversation to anything. There is no goal, so they cannot fail by discussing anything, but they cannot win either. Often there is no agenda which reflects the purpose of the discussion, and it is likely going to lead to finding the agenda, if ever, in the middle of the discussion and thus wasting time. Participants can always report back that they discussed something and have a full sense of progress. A simple tool becomes the final goal. That is when things start going wrong. We surveyed 182 senior managers in a range of industries. 65% said meetings keep them from completing their own work. 71% said meetings are unproductive and inefficient. Instead of using the phrase, "let's discuss," consider getting more specific. For example, let's reach an agreement on the scope of the ABC project and work out an action plan for the next 2 weeks. Consolidate information about a topic, project, or domain in one place that is up to date and accessible by everyone who is involved. In other words, maintain a single source of truth to engage people into work and minimize having to share information because it's already there in the source. Gathering all or nearly all the data in one accessible place about that project you are working on a wiki-like platform. Scope, decisions, documentation. Alternatively, it may be other types of solutions like Jira. It could be Miro, it could be GitLab, it does not matter. What matters is that you now have a team effort to consolidate information in one place to a reasonable extent, which in return is going to benefit the team. I have found it to be one of the most effective techniques to promote knowledge sharing without spending too much time on an overhead like meetings. By making information available, you will change the game by going from a push system when information is pushed upon me by the entitled knowledge holders and I have to separate valuable information from a lot of noise all the time, to a pull system, when you, figuratively speaking, only need to insert a straw in that information pool and sip that tasty information that you need for your work. Say, television would be a prime example of a push system because the information is forced upon you by the media companies and network providers without a possibility to skip or choose a different TV show on the same TV channel. YouTube would be an example of a pull system because you can sort through the information and choose what you would like to see, like this video. Foster asynchronous communication in your team that is not strictly bound to people's availability and can still help you move forward. I'm talking about work chats here. The messages can be easily navigatable via search. You can add new people and share the chat history with them, making it possible for them to quickly catch up with the current state. Recurrent meetings sometimes become deadlines on their own. I'm sure you have heard the phrase, "for the next meeting, let's do this and that." That is why recurrent meetings can contribute to the student syndrome, which is, in other words, planned procrastination until the last moment before the deadline comes, or, in our case, next recurrent meeting. That is yet another situation when culture of asynchronous work and communication comes on top in comparison to meetings because it's more transparent, and waits for no meeting to establish the first feedback. Everyone can see the document that you are working on online at any convenient moment, but it requires effort to check on something that is owned only by one person and is waiting for the next presentation to reveal itself. Within most legacy organizations, information is power. We hoard it to elevate our status, create job security, and protect ourselves from its misuse. This perpetuates the power structure and creates opacity that allows bias and misinformation to thrive. Unchecked, this almost always leads to scandal and missed opportunities. To avoid that, try shortening or dismantling hierarchy in your organization, which will help you to shorten the chains of knowledge sharing and decision making to achieve speed, minimize distortion of the information, and disturb fewer colleagues along the way. Sometimes the best practice is no practice. In heavily bureaucratic systems, often the smartest thing you can do is remove obstacles. That might mean eliminating a policy, a layer, a meeting, a budget, or a project to see how the culture responds. This is always a great idea to sit down with your team and reevaluate what meetings you have and what value or lack thereof they bring to you. Another problem about using meeting too much is that meetings split up a workday. Remember last time you had to join a meeting? You likely start thinking how to pause work so that you would not leave it hanging. That is unnecessary hassle that should be avoided. Not only should we account for direct time spent in meetings, we need to know of the time wasted for wrapping up work before the meeting begins and restarting the work after. When people are constantly interrupted, they develop a mode of working faster and writing less, to compensate for the time they know they will lose by being interrupted. Yet working faster with interruptions has its cost. People in the interrupted conditions experience a higher workload, more stress, higher frustration, more time pressure and effort. So interrupted work may be done faster, but at a price. If multiple meetings with the same or overlapping circles of people are inevitable, try merging meetings together and dedicate one part of the time to one agenda and the second part to the other. This way you will minimize disruption of your colleagues due to them having to prepare and wind up work multiple times to attend two or more separate meetings standing apart in the schedule. Another idea you could try is to introduce certain days or at least hours in your week during which no single meeting will be allowed. If anyone has questions or requests, send a message. This can be one of the ways to deal with a meeting overload. A meeting is not the only way to think something over. A great way to start a project or propose a fresh idea is to create a mind map. I frequently use this technique to unload all the ideas in one place and then start organizing them into chunks of topics. You can also decompose the scope of the projects very effectively with this kind of technique. Most popular digital mind map tools are Figma and Miro, but you have to check your security policy to not expose any sensitive data, since those two are cloud solutions. An offline alternative that I use as well is Steel Draw extension for Visual Studio Code, which you can use to store and edit your mind map locally on your computer. The last but not least, as old as the hills, is a simple piece of paper. I often use it for rules and schemes that get me started thinking about problems as systems and structures. Do not try to perfectly express your ideas on your first attempt. Chase your thoughts and write them down quickly. Once you have them written, you can start enriching and developing them. Also, archive the ones irrelevant too, because you may need them later. Then, you can share the mind map with your colleagues for further collaboration. Boom! A lot of time was just saved right there, and now you can have your first step made pretty quickly. One of the main reasons why meetings are still such a common tool in the work environment is the feeling of being needed that people get while participating in these meetings, which frequently comes with an often false sense of being productive. The phrase, "I'm busy," or "I have a tight schedule," can bring the sense of importance to whoever says these things. Longer status updates do not mean that more work was done. Longer meetings do not mean that more decisions were made and more information was shared. Make that clear to your colleagues. More often than not, residing to a meeting as a means of working is just a collective habit that's solidified in your organization in the lack of a better option. Since now you have a toolkit to try out, you can decompose this habit into the cue, what triggered the habit, in this case, what triggered a meeting. An action, what was done in the reaction to a cue, in our case, the action was conducting a meeting. And feedback, what you got as a result of conducting a meeting. Take the most recent example of that and identify these three parts with your colleagues. Ask yourselves if there was anything possible to be done to prevent the cue, pick a different reaction to the cue, and get a more satisfying feedback in return. Ask yourselves also if the feedback was objective and if it was similar with different colleagues, because it may not be that way, and also how this feedback contributes to your pursuits of wasting less time and getting more done. If you have already tried to make the work environment more asynchronous, horizontal, and consolidated, or you are trying to do so, it is now high time to consider what can be done about the necessary meeting. To set our expectations straight, the meeting itself is only a small fraction of the work. The most effort and consequently time is the preparation and the follow-up. When organizing a meeting, remember that the people you're inviting are going to spend their precious time with you. Not only that, but they are going to be paying attention, so you'd better come prepared. Meetings are usually scheduled through the help of invitations in your calendar of choice. Those invitations have time slots. My observation is that in 90% of the cases, the durations of those time slots are random. You do not have to sit through the whole time slot that you have assigned for yourselves when you were scheduling it. Done with the agenda, simply move on with your day. Use the time slots to introduce urgency to finish meetings faster, bringing the limits that can be demanding at first, but will serve you as a good structure to keep your meeting to the point. Any time limit is meaningless if you ignore sticking to it, so keep that in mind as well. To keep the meeting to the point, always prepare an agenda for the meeting. It is a great thinking exercise for you to spend more time to think over what the meeting is going to be about. This is why it's already a way to more conscious work, and it's a good sign of respect for the people's time. A good agenda will have three things: what you are planning to do at the meeting, why you need to do whatever you are planning to do at the meeting, and how you are going to do that. So, in short, the contents, or the what, the reason, or the why, and the means, or the how. Ensure that the participants know that the agenda exists. They know where to find the agenda, and they can easily do so. Good practice is to share documents that you want to review at the meeting itself in advance, so that you would have a more meaningful conversation in a shorter amount of time at the meeting. The fact that every participant is going to be familiar with the files is not guaranteed, of course, but a relation would appear that promotes the team members come prepared, since they would spend less time in the conversation itself if they do so. Make sure that everyone can see this relation of being prepared and having to spend less time. In addition, send the agenda of the meeting you're about to have in advance too. You can attach it to the invitation of the meeting. The other way around agenda would be to check before the meeting if anyone has any agenda. If there is none, skip the meeting. A thoughtful thing to do is to sometimes check if every participant knows how they can be helpful at the meeting. You can do that by setting the expectations in the how section of the agenda. An example will look like this. We are meeting to review the budget for the upcoming project and approve the further projects planned based on it. This is the what. Now there's going to be the why. In the previous project, we got over the budget due to overlooking the analysis of the scope, so this time we are going to do it in advance and spend more time with it. This meeting is part of that. And now the last part, the how. Product manager Laura is going to present the metrics we would like to affect with the upcoming project. DevOps Christian will help us understand what will have to be done to have the infrastructure supporting the new project in place. And Maria and Peter will show the scope of the features we've got in front of ourselves. An agenda like this can take 5 minutes to write, yet it can save you hours at the meeting. If you are visiting someone else's meeting and you still do not know how you can contribute best, or what is expected of you seems irrelevant or confusing, do not hesitate to ask for clarification. You are not making it sound like you're unwilling to cooperate. You just do not want to waste people's time by not contributing the way you could and you're expected to. The chance is high that the organizer of the meeting is going to appreciate the thoughtfulness and will help you help them more. Consider experimenting with the formats of media that you usually use to get your point across. Namely, get rid of presentations as a means of sharing information since it's a tool to sell. Instead, try text format. It is not going to be as engaging at first, but the conversation is going to be more open and deep. Don't bring everybody to a meeting. You can reach your objective with the decision makers and then inform everybody later, asynchronously over chats and emails. Manage your stakeholders. One of the ways to do that would be to look into Responsibility Assignment Matrix, or RACI. The name of the matrix is an acronym. These 4 letters stand for 4 different levels of involvement in any type of work, from the most involvement to the least: responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Let's assume that for the next meeting at which you are planning to agree on the design of a single button for the website you are working on, you do not need the attendance of the CEO of the company. You'll just inform this person once it's done. By differentiating colleagues based on their involvement, you can get work done faster and easier. The example is exaggerated for the sake of explicitness, but at times it can get tricky which category to put this or that person into. Do not stress it and just try things out. First, try making participants that fall into the consulted and informed groups tentative, and include them to the meeting only when they are essential. Gather feedback later and see if this technique helped. A very important thing to do here would be to not connect involvement with importance of any given person, because it can possibly lead to conflicts, frustration, or elitism. In general, consider the 2-Peter rule to put an end to the meetings with the huge lists of participants. The rule is that the meeting should have no more people than a group that could be fed by 2 large Peters. Once you do that, you can even try making it a 1-Peter rule. Yet another way you can skip a meeting or minimize the amount of participants is by sending colleagues to a meeting as representatives. Experiment with these methods to see what works best for you. Sometimes there are meetings that include multiple topics of discussion, and one topic is more specific than the rest and does not require the participation of the full list of invitees to be present. Push those kind of topics to the end of the meeting so that the people who can leave will have an ability to do so without missing anything that they relate to. Now, onto the technical side of meetings. Another way you can bring up the quality of your online meeting experience is to check your camera. Yes, camera, because if anyone really cares, they would not like to be staring at the avatar while trying to have a meaningful conversation. Also, your microphone and your internet connection. I'm not advocating for any expensive gear. Image and sound quality has become pretty affordable in the last years. Is your room well lit? Can people hear you well? Can they hear any background noises? Even though these days almost every video conferencing application has a background noise suppression, it is still worth double checking if you have it turned on. All in all, it does not take a professional video maker to get pretty good video and audio these days. If you are going to use a cell phone or a tablet for video conferencing, switch off the notifications because they can be distracting and sometimes irritative for others. The chances are high that your device has the Do Not Disturb mode or its alternative that can help you with that. In addition, if you're going to use any extra gear or tools like an external microphone you have just bought or a new video conferencing software, test these things before the meeting. It is pretty straightforward advice, yet often overlooked. I need to start off this chapter by mentioning an integral part of any successful communication, and this is that you need to make sure that there is a safe work environment free of toxicity, political games, and misuse of trust and power for the full team. That is communication 101. That is the basics which you're going to be building anything more complex on. How to achieve it can be a topic of a separate discussion because a safe work environment does not come out of the box and it has to be actively maintained. Have a look around yourself. Many people start really far from the point when presenting a topic or searching for a solution. Okay, Brian, so what are our next steps? Let me bring in some context first. A long, long time ago, there was a big bang, and then there were dinosaurs, and then think if the context is needed, and to what extent next time you're asked something. Do not try to squeeze in a huge full picture at least in one go. I can bet you can always cut something off without sacrificing what you're trying to say. Some of the signs you might be talking too much could be the fact that you talk way more than your colleagues do, your listeners miss your point, and you need to explain things multiple times. You will do your colleagues a favor if you could present topics in fewer words. If you want to be heard, imagine that the attention of your audience is 100%. If you say 100 words, each of your words is going to have approximately 1% of overall audience's attention. If you say 1,000 words, the audience's attention is going to be more dispersed, and each word is going to bear 10 times less weight if other variables are unchanged. Learning to say fewer words is a wonderful skill that takes conscious effort and is not easy, yet it can definitely make you a more interesting and more effective presenter. One of the ways to learn how to explain anything in fewer words is to create text and edit them heavily while trying to preserve the initial meaning. Another exercise is to record voice memos to yourself trying to explain a concept or comment on something. Listening to those voice memos of yours can be an eye-opening experience and a good starting point to begin trying to express yourself more eloquently. In general, if you want to step up your meeting game, get invested in improving your communication skills. There are tons of ways to do that, little to no hassle, and completely for free. If you feel like you're pulling and pushing all the time, or you're just a very important person invited to the meeting, try speaking last. This way you get what other colleagues think because their opinions could not have been influenced by your opinion yet. Try asking more questions than you give answers. This is a good way to get your less senior colleagues to get organically involved, and this sets the whole team on the way to a more sustainable future, since not only the leader is pulling the rope, but instead this person promotes a place for colleagues to shine and share responsibility. After all, this is what leadership is about. From the topic of presenting information, let us now get on the opposite side of the process, eliciting information. And specifically asking good questions is an art on its own. In any truth or innovation-seeking endeavor, it is easy to get lost in the biases. I can recommend 2 books that can help you get more meaningful questions and eventually answers. You can find more information about the books in the description of this video. But if you're not into reading, that is fine too. In this video I put everything there is to know about the topic so you are covered. The first book is The Mum Test: How to Talk to Customers and Learn If Your Business is a Good Idea When Everyone is Lying to You by Rob Fitzpatrick. Even though the title says that the book focuses on talking to customers, the advice from the book is easily applicable to a variety of different scenarios of talking to colleagues and even relatives. That is an excellent and relatively short read about how to get the most out of a conversation to filter out the fluff and cut to the essence. Getting insightful information from someone is hard. Getting insightful and not misleading information even more so. I learned a lot from this book and became more capable of building truth-seeking conversations and leading them to a result. Even if you think you're a good truth seeker, I'm sure you will learn something fresh from Rob's book. Some of many key takeaways from this book are to always be on the lookout for bad data and trying to avoid compliments, fluff, and ideas. Not to pitch to the people you're having a conversation with, and instead of asking them, is it good? Ask them about their behavior in the past which is related to the topic, because this way there is going to be fewer lies. Another great piece of advice that I got from this book is to always be afraid of at least one question that you're going to ask in the conversation that has the potential to completely crush your understanding of the situation you are trying to prove. How to Lie with Statistics by Daryl Huff. This book is 70 years old, but it still remains relevant for whomever works with information, analyzes it, and draws conclusions from it. The reason I'm recommending this book in relation to information eliciting is because more often than not information is bad quality, or even worse, it's misleading. Huff expands on different techniques that are popular to present the same topics from different angles based on the choice of statistics surrounding it and getting different conclusions each time. After presenting something, when asking for feedback, try to get more specific. What do you think about it is not a good question because it's too general and is not aimed at getting any valuable answer at the end. Get more specific. Instead of asking what a person thinks about a new idea, ask what they missed or what was not clear. Try not to ask multiple people at the same time. It often creates confusion because your colleagues will have to answer all at the same time or quickly decide who's going to answer first. Do not use questions as a passive-aggressive tool to expose that someone was not listening to you. Instead, make sure that the person understands the question. If not, help your fellow colleague out. Do not be mean even if you're pissed with audience not listening. If you ever notice such a thing, this can be a great opportunity to think why it is happening. Do not start with me versus them rhetoric. Of course, there is always a chance your audience is just not fit for you. But the point of any communication is to be heard. So even in that case, you've got to work with what you got. A bad audience simply does not exist. Instead, I want you to consider audiences that are easy to talk to and those that are tough. By looking at it this way, you will treat talking to a tough audience as a challenge for you. Asking yourself, what is the audience I'm going to talk to, is always a good start. This way you will get your brain thinking about how to make the information you're about to deliver more understandable instead of blaming others of not getting your level of genius. Frustrated with the previous meeting? Ask yourself, what did I not take into account that should have been done differently? Maybe your language was too technical and it was hard for business people to follow. Maybe you talked for too long. Maybe you digressed too many times and it was difficult to follow your thoughts. Or maybe the audience did not see how the topic was ever related to them or relevant in the first place. There are many reasons, but as soon as you channel all this frustration from not being listened to by the audience onto how you could have given a better talk, you're on the right constructive track. The next piece of advice might seem counterintuitive, but think about it. Have you ever noticed that taking a short break during the meeting can make the meeting shorter? It is like everyone gets a breath of fresh air, an opportunity to focus on something else, and then getting back to the meeting ensures you to focus on finishing it faster, since you've already tasted freedom and want to get back to other matters. Besides, your cognitive capabilities are refreshed. We find that the likelihood of a favorable ruling by a judge is greater at the very beginning of the workday or after a food break than later in the sequence of cases. The plot shows that the likelihood of a ruling in favor of a prisoner spikes at the beginning of each session. The probability of a favorable ruling steadily declines from 65% to nearly zero and jumps back up to 65% after a break for a meal. If you plan to have a break, it is worth mentioning it before the meeting in the agenda and remind everybody at the start of the meeting when you plan to have the break. Another thing you could try is the Pomodoro technique. 25 minutes of meeting that get followed by a 5-minute breaks or other activities. This helps you to get your focus and potentially finish the meetings faster. These days, there is Microsoft Teams and other alternatives offering a feature of recording minutes of meetings. Trying this feature out to share the information with everyone involved later could be your next experiment to make meetings less disruptive, even though this approach has its own shortcomings. Have you ever felt frustration about wanting to ask a question, but the organizer or somebody else quickly finishes and does not give an opportunity to say anything? In this case, you will have to interrupt this person or accept your fate. Both are not ideal. To escape that, before finishing a meeting, always ask your colleagues if they have anything to add or ask. Make that a habit so that everybody else would be doing that too, or at least expecting it from you. To make the most out of the meeting, it definitely helps to take notes along the way. Usually the organizer takes notes, but this can be done by multiple people. This can be assigned to a specific invitee or done voluntarily without prior agreement. This approach has its advantages. Taking notes saves time on having to recollect stuff after the conversation happened. Showing your notes to your colleagues creates an opportunity to check if you have heard them right, and you both have a pretty much the same idea of what you've just discussed and agreed on. You can now easily share what you discussed and decided with people that have not participated in the meeting. This particular fact can save you time by not having to explain or retell to others what happened, but simply sending them the notes. I recommend practicing doing it while maintaining an eye contact with the camera, because no one is going to like you looking all weird in an opposite direction for the whole conversation. The way you can kind of cheat here is that you can open a text editor near where your web camera is located. You are going to see everything you write down and still not look weird to your colleagues. While taking notes, I would not recommend interrupting whoever is talking, because this way they are going to miss their ideas. If you have questions, just write them down in the middle of someone's monologue and then address all the questions in one go instead. I have found that technique to be saving a lot of time at the meeting too, because the person talking does not have to switch topics back and forth all the time. Finish any meeting with an action plan and agree on the plan with the participants of the meeting. If you were taking notes during the discussion all alone, you are now able to, before the meeting ends, share your notes in a chat or share your screen with the notes to adjust them or add some more. A good thing to try would be to ask yourself what the measure of progress is achievable and realistic. Who is going to take care of that? What is the time target for this? Do we have everything to do what is needed? On the topic of winding up, it could be your next experiment to set aside the very last 5 minutes of your next meeting and spend it in silence with your team while doing what you can quickly do out of the action plan that you've just discussed. Someone needs credentials. Do it all at the meeting. You get the ball rolling right away. You get untangled without a delay to be able to do something more complex as your next action. In these 5 minutes, also check that the action plan of the meeting is published and available to everyone related. If there is anything that can be done in a matter of couple of minutes maximum, grades given, emails written, online invitations sent out, try finishing those things at the end. That is yet another way to make sure your interaction brought results straight away. Do not let the momentum fade away. Do not hesitate to share your ways of making meetings shorter, less frequent, and more meaningful in the comments section of this video. If I had to pick one thing for you to take away from this video, this is going to be this. An action done, a goal achieved, an objective reached is what makes any meeting make sense in the first place. If a conversation did not lead to anything, it was simply time wasted. It is important to differentiate, though, between a missed opportunity to act upon the decisions made at the meeting and a follow-up, which turned into a failure, which in return became a precious learning experience for you and your colleagues. Do not treat them equally because they are not the same. Make sure your colleagues can spot the difference too. It helps meeting in person at least once in a blue moon, because people are people, and we all can build stronger relationships with colleagues through in-person communication. Try some informal gatherings and see how it impacts the way you interact with your colleagues. First off, focus on transforming your work environment so that you would need fewer meetings overall. Do that through consolidating sources of information into one and making it a team effort. Reevaluate with your team if you need all the meetings you are currently having and how those meetings are run. Foster asynchronous communication and stop the gatekeeping of information. If a meeting is still needed, make sure you have an agenda and you communicated this agenda to all the participants in advance. A meaningful agenda should cover the what, the why, and the how of the upcoming meeting. To make sure your meetings are faster and more focused, do not bring everyone slightly involved to every single meeting. Differentiate between those who should be present and those who can simply be periodically consulted with or informed afterwards. Before the meeting, make sure both your software and hardware work and you know how to use them. Remember that the majority of work usually happens before and after the meeting, not at the meeting. If there is no follow-up, the chances are high that the meeting was useless. If you have any materials that you are planning on showing at the meeting, send them over prior to the meeting to let people familiarize themselves with it and already come prepared for the discussion, making it shorter. Ensure everybody understands why they are being invited. At the meeting, speak less, listen more, stick to the meeting's agenda, make sure anyone can speak up. Learn to ask great questions. Take notes and share them with the colleagues just before the end of every meeting. Edit the notes if needed. Try to get early results at the end of every meeting if the tasks to be done can be finished in less than a couple of minutes. Get invested in bettering your presentation skills. It is such a universal set of soft skills that you can never go wrong with. Also, try experimenting with the ways the information is being presented. Consider steering away from the types of media like presentations, because they are used for selling, not collaborating, and are a one-way information channel. Instead, try online collaboration boards or simple text to present your ideas. After the meeting, always do the follow-up that you have assigned for yourselves earlier at the meeting, because otherwise it's not going to make much sense. Besides all that, learn from the best. Think of the last meeting you enjoyed the most. What was so special about that? What of those techniques could you use in your meeting to make them faster and more meaningful? Thank you for making it to the end of the video with me. I know that we have covered a lot today, so to make things easier for you, I'm going to share a free great list of questions that you can find using the link in the description of this video. Go through these questions before, at, and after the meeting for you to get consistent, better results. In addition, if you do not mind reading, as I already mentioned earlier in the video, I am leaving a list of books and researchers that are related to the topic. If you are not a reading type, do not worry, we have already covered everything today, but in a shorter form. Share your experiences in the comments and let us build a community of like-minded forever learners together. Consider subscribing to this channel so that you would not miss future videos. Hopefully, in this video you have found something inspiring, thought-provoking or useful that you are already thinking about trying out with your colleagues. It has been me, Valentin Dragin. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.